Hi, I'm Corzine, your social media lawyer, and I'm here to tell you why the US is waging an antitrust war against Facebook. It all started in June of 2019. That's when the FTC, that's the US Federal Trade Commission, told Facebook that it was going to start investigating Facebook for creation of a monopoly and violation of antitrust laws. As a side note, the FTC is a US governmental agency whose job is to stop unfair, fraudulent, and deceptive business practices in America. So what it does is it conducts investigations of both foreign and domestic companies, it sues companies, and it punishes companies if they violate FTC or antitrust rules. As a part of its investigation, the FTC requested and reviewed millions and millions of pages of documents from Facebook. They also interviewed past employees and current employees. They actually interviewed Mark Zuckerberg in August of 2020. What information was the FTC looking for in their investigation of Facebook? Well, in short, any evidence that Facebook violated the Sherman Antitrust Act, and to be more exact, any evidence that Facebook violated the FTC Act and possibly the Clayton Antitrust Act. We're not going to go into detail on those other acts. I just wanted to let you know that those are applicable to this discussion too. So back to the Sherman Antitrust Law's definition. What is this act? It's a law that was passed, I think, back in 1890 or so, and basically it's designed to protect consumers from unfair competition among corporations. What did the Sherman Antitrust Act do? The law made sure that there were strong incentives for companies that are doing business in America to operate efficiently, to make good product, and to compete fairly in the marketplace. What does the antitrust law require companies to do? It's gonna sound kind of funny, but basically, all these big kind of scary sounding laws, all they require companies to do is to act reasonably and to protect consumers. So one thing that companies cannot do, and which will violate antitrust laws, is they cannot collaborate with their competitors to rig the market. So an example might be, let's say, a couple of camera manufacturers like Sony and Canon and Nikon and maybe all the others, they get together and they say, the minimum price in America for a camera is going to be $5,000. It doesn't matter whether or not it costs $100 to make the camera. The minimum price in America is going to be $5,000. That's where they collaborate to rig the market and to deprive consumers of the benefits of saving costs and being efficient. The second thing which is unreasonable under antitrust laws is to do what I call bad vertical integration or bad horizontal integration. Now, vertical integration is really simple. It's when one company buys another company that's earlier or later in the supply chain. So a good example might be McDonald's. They may decide to buy a cow farm, which is earlier in the supply chain. They may do this to be more efficient, so it costs less to create burgers and they can charge less for their burgers. Horizontal integration is when one company buys another company and they have similar functions. So a good example of that might be Facebook when they bought Instagram. They're both social media sites that allow users to make posts on their websites for people to view. So when Facebook bought Instagram, that's a good example of horizontal integration. Vertical integration or horizontal integration by itself is not a bad thing. It happens all the time. It only becomes bad and therefore violates the Sherman Antitrust Law if it destroys competition or prevents other companies from emerging in the marketplace. The last type of unreasonable conduct that violates antitrust legislation is an unreasonable monopoly. What is a monopoly? That's when a company controls the entire market for a good or service in a given geographic location. So a good example from the past of this is US Steel. Back in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, US Steel was the only place that people could get steel for construction. If you wanted to have steel to build a skyscraper or something, you had to go to US Steel. There were no other options. So that's an example of a monopoly. That monopoly becomes a violation of antitrust laws when the actions that the company that has the monopoly took are unreasonable, they're unfair, they're fraudulent, they're deceptive. Okay, that's probably enough law for now. Now you know what antitrust law is. The question that I'm really here to answer is, Why is the FTC investigating Facebook for antitrust violations? And the answer is because in the next couple of days or maybe next week, it is anticipated that the FTC and other state agencies may sue Facebook for violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. I anticipate that the FTC and potentially the state attorneys general from around the country are going to bring a lawsuit that says that Facebook violated antitrust laws based upon what I call bad horizontal integration because they purchased Instagram and WhatsApp, and they in turn stifled the competition in the social media platforms marketplace. I also think that the FTC is going to argue that when Facebook bought Instagram and WhatsApp, that was a horizontal merger that reduced the choices for us consumers when we're deciding what types of messenger apps we're going to use. And the final thing that I believe that the FTC will allege, and maybe the state's attorney general, is that Facebook's use of our consumer private information to be able to sell to us was fraudulent and unfair. Now, Facebook's response, we haven't received one yet. I'm sure we will if and when a lawsuit is filed by the FTC. In the past, Mark Zuckerberg has said there was no antitrust violations by Facebook, partly because he says there is so much competition among social media platforms. He said Snapchat and TikTok have a lot of the similar functions as Instagram and Facebook and potentially WhatsApp, and therefore they are invading Facebook's market. They are competing, and if there's competition in the social media space, then that is not indicative of an antitrust violation. He also said there's no way that Facebook has a monopoly on messaging apps. There is QQ and WeChat and Telegram, Apple Messages. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of different messaging apps. Facebook definitely does not have a monopoly. That is what Mark Zuckerberg says. And Mark defended Facebook's collection of personal information by saying, listen, we did it, yes, but it was with your consent. Everything that we took from you, we disclosed how we were going to use it, and we told you what the ramifications were of it. So yes, we took your personal information, but we did it with your permission. So what's going to happen with this FTC lawsuit against Facebook? You know, I don't know for sure, but I do think that the weakest point Facebook has sits with the horizontal integration argument. I think it's a little weird that Facebook was allowed to purchase Instagram and WhatsApp. I mean, that is a huge space in the internet social media marketplace. It reminds me of like if Coca-Cola bought Pepsi. Sure, if they had a merged corporation, they wouldn't control all the soda pop market. However, they probably would control 80% of it. So I do think that's the weakness that Facebook has in this potential lawsuit that should be filed in the next week or so. But I really want to know, what do you think? Do you think that Facebook is going to lose this FTC lawsuit? Do you think Facebook is in the right? Let me know in the comment section below. I think the key takeaways from this story of the FTC and Facebook are threefold. The first one is popularity. Just remember, when you create your business or your brand and you get more and more famous, there's always going to be people out there, and in this case, the government, to try to take you down. The second thing I think of is the government power. Remember, as you become more and more successful in your life, always remember that there's the government check on your success. What that means is that, you know, some people think they start a business, it starts growing, and they're doing great. But we remember from this last 10-month period or so that the government at any time can shut us down. So as a result, we have to be diverse in our business interests. We can't just focus on one business and then go for 5 or 10 years only to be shut down entirely. And the final takeaway that I got is don't be greedy. When Facebook bought Instagram and WhatsApp, you know, it sounds greedy to me. It sounds like it's too much. If Facebook had just continued in their lane, doing social media posts and advertising and messaging, maybe they wouldn't have drew the ire of the government and the public. Maybe they just bit off more than they can chew. And it's a lesson for us. When we're running our businesses, it's so great to grow and to expand, potentially to merge with other businesses. But we have to be careful about how big we get, because the bigger we get, the easier it is for other external forces like the government to take us down. If you have any more lessons that you took from this Facebook FTC lawsuit, let me know in the comment section below. Oh, and one more thing. I did a free legal brief for you, which breaks down the FTC lawsuit against Facebook. If you'd like that, just text LAW, that's LAW, to 213-340-3302. That's all I got for today. If you want to, please subscribe. Otherwise, thanks for watching.